My makeup doesn't exist.
26 years, all I think about is makeup. Okay, go ahead. That's how been long as we've known each other, but let's go. Okay.
We have known each other a long time. How are you?
You know, my husband died. Do you know that, right?
No, Monica. We're
Okay,
live
but
on
we'll have to do
YouTube.
this later. So he died. He had cancer 2 years after our second child was born, and he died in 2019, like November. And then the pandemic hit in March. So it's been really intense. But anyway,
Yeah.
let's do this and then we can talk. I want to talk to you
Yes.
someday as a person.
Well, let's talk to our live audience, and then you
Okay.
and I can catch up. So it's
Okay.
so great to see you. I
Good to
probably
see
haven't
you.
seen you in 10 years.
Yeah, a long time. It was great. You are, my infectious disease doctor friend.
Yeah, so you've been busy though. I mean, it's a busy time for all of us, right? Trying to
Yeah.
address misinformation,
Yes.
disinformation, helping people understand that vaccines are safe. Sure, they have side effects, but there's a lot of information flowing around and confusing people. So tell us
Massive.
about how that's been for you.
It's true. Like, I think, like you said, as an infectious disease doctor, every single day, if you're not taking the information that's coming in, like a new paper or something in the news, and then trying to message it appropriately, how are people supposed to process that information? I think there's a lot of misinformation, and there's a lot of anxiety provoking things as well. So I think it's our job to, put it together.
Yeah. So most recently, I see you are trying to help people make sense of the CDC messaging around masks.
Yeah.
You've been very vocal. I've seen you on Twitter, and you seem to be popping up everywhere on television as well. So good for you. When I first heard the CDC announcement, my first concern was frontline workers, because my concern was, are people going to be shopping without a mask, even though they're unvaccinated? And I went to Whole Foods the other day, and even Safeway, everyone still had on a mask. So that was a bit of relief for me. But I saw one guy who didn't have one on, and the security guy was giving him the side eye. So just curious, what do you think about this CDC recommendation?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great point. I think it actually revealed, by the way, our distrust of each other in this society, because I kept on thinking to myself, I can't imagine a whole bunch of unvaccinated, like infective people rushing towards people to try to infect them. What I mean is, it's not, I think this distrust that we have of each other is being reflected in the panic that occurred, including among frontline workers, because I also totally agree with you. Who has been hurt by this pandemic? Essential workers, racial and ethnic minorities, anyone who's more poor. That's the populations we take care of. And there's no doubt that you would want to protect these populations. We didn't do a good job protecting them before from COVID. On the other hand, and the CDC guidance was poorly messaged, so I'm going to admit that. On the other hand, everything they actually said, if you cut past the poor messages, is a poor timing, abrupt messaging. It was all sound. And what's sound is that once you get the vaccine, you're really protected, like more than any vaccine I've seen. I mean, these are really highly effective. They're safe. And also you protect others around you by being vaccinated, because you can't transmit, very unlikely. And then the unvaccinated should still be wearing their masks until their incidence in the community comes down low enough that if you've chosen not to get vaccinated, because some people are choosing that, or children, that people are going to be protected. Ultimately, they are already in my region by just the low case rates. Remember that they didn't put in community incidents, which I wish they had. It would have been just better to message, if your case rates are low, like 2 over 100,000, 2 to 3 over 100,000, that's the metric UK said, a day, 21 over 7 days, and no one's wearing masks, still the unvaccinated people are protected because of the low community incidence with high population immunity. So they didn't do it right. But on the other hand, everything they put, all the studies they listed were correct.
But I think the concern is we're at a bit of a plateau. So to continue to have, as high a caseload as we have right now without seeing a steep drop continually, I think that's what concerns people. And they're seeing what's happening in India and saying, oh, is that going to happen to us? So What are your thoughts about that? I hope this
So,
is not going to be an India situation here, and that we really are on a sustainable decrease. But you never know with this virus. It's fooled us many times.
well, the one thing I want to say about the virus fooling us many times is it's only fooled us before the vaccine. And so I know that the
Good
CDC
point.
director said, I'm really worried it can go up, it can go down. That's not accurate after vaccines, because luckily we have a couple of countries, actually three. We don't talk about Bahrain much, but we have two countries, and UK is the one I'm going to point to, because they've also had high rates of infection like we did here, where they have been applying vaccines, opening up, and nothing is going up in terms of cases or surges. Why? Because anything that happened before, you didn't have immunity in a population, so you'd open up, you'd allow not mask wearing, and then this scary surges would occur, and then we'd have to clamp down again, right? That's totally different than where we are now. And I think that keeps on being missed. Our cases are going down. They're very actually nicely going down, in the sense that they have been consistently going down by negative 20% drop in a 7-day period, steadily since April 14th. We're now under 30,000 for the first time since the very early days of the pandemic, when we weren't testing. So let's just say even in summer, when we were at a lull before the summer surge, 27,000 across the United States. It is uneven. There are places like where I live that it's very low, in San Francisco and California, because the vaccination rate has been up. But they are going down. UK opened up. They didn't see these surges. They had 3,000 people in a Liverpool nightclub, maskless, sweaty on a floor, to test the system, to test it, right? You have to test herd immunity, and test that these vaccines work. And that was allowed. It was kind of, they watched it carefully. It was on May 5th, and no increase in cases after that.
Wow,
so these
that's good
vaccines
news.
do work.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was a test
They-
that we likely won't do here, but they did that.
Yeah, I know. I mean,
Yeah.
the vaccines are game changers, but we really have a lot of skepticism still. And even if they turn out to be fringe, so say 10 to 15% are still vaccine hesitant, which is actually a term I really don't like, but
Yeah.
for lack of a better one right now, I'll use that. I think even without those folks, if we can educate enough people about the safety of these vaccines, we can definitely get there. But how do you respond to people who continue to be skeptical? We put a video on here with a vaccine expert, or and a pediatric expert about the vaccine, and we got so much blowback about supporting vaccines. And it's
Wow.
really difficult. I
Yeah.
really want to have open dialogue with people, but sometimes it's really hard. So how do you deal with that?
Well, I think it goes back to this not trusting each other and our judgmental, non-compassionate messaging, I think, that we've applied throughout the whole pandemic. So the New York Times, I really have to criticize them for this, put out an article on the 4 groups that are still deciding about the vaccine. And it was a well-written article, but the title was, "Here are the groups that are holding you back."
Oh,
And
no.
that's so judgmental.
Yes.
There are real reasons that people are still debating whether they're going to get the vaccine, and real heartfelt reasons. And so the 4 groups, though, that were divided into, one was, maybe people, it's hard for them to realize this, but if you are on a day-to-day wage and they're not going to give you 3 hours off to go and get the vaccine, and you've just lost a $7 to $15 wage times 3, you've lost your daily wage. So you have to make it convenient. People who are working day to day, where weekly wages matter, you have to make it convenient, bring it to people, or nighttime, or going out in the communities. It can't be like they can't go to a vaccination site and do that. So I really think it's terribly important about thinking about people who have to work for a living, essential workers, about making it convenient. That was one group. They just literally said, "I'll do it when I can. I can't take time off."
But the
And
employers need to give people time off,
yes,
right?
that's
In case
right.
there's
Right.
in case there's an adverse reaction or people have side effects. When I got the vaccine, I needed 2 days off.
Yeah, I did not feel great for 24 hours as well. And it's imperative for employers to say, you can't say you have to wear a mask and distance until you're vaccinated, and then not give the people the ability to vaccinate, right? So I completely agree with that. And this is a very our corporate world is not used to thinking like this, but this is a once in a century pandemic, and that's what people should be doing, giving time off. Okay, so then that's one group. Then another group was people who actually just want to see the safety for a while longer, and that's fair. And the fact that we're still giving out like 1.2 to 1.5 million doses a day, I do recognize it's down from 3 million, but means that people are still getting vaccinated. Like sometimes people wanted to wait. And then third, you know very well, but like communities messaging to communities, it's just, you know, I'm not going to trust like, actually Kamala Harris said something very interesting in the debate. She said, I wouldn't trust it if Trump told me, right? Like, so it depends on what, but it's fair. It's to say like, who's your messenger who's telling you to take a vaccine? And there are a lot of white, older male politicians who are messaging that may not speak to you. And then there are some people who truly believe it's unsafe or there's something wrong about it. And I think that's where we meet people with compassion. Like you said, I don't like the word anti-anything, anti-mask or anti-vaxxer. And we're so not compassionate about what could be making people feel strange about it. Oh, one thing they did say is that, and I truly, going back to the CDC, I honestly think they are talking to people that I'm not. And people said, when you tell me life goes back to normal, I'll go get the vaccine and I don't have to wear a mask. And I think they were trying to motivate some people.
And I think some people may be motivated by that, but a lot of the folks I'm talking to, we made a video asking community members how they felt about the CDC recommendation just last week.
Yeah.
And uniformly, people said it's too early. I'm going to continue wearing my mask. So I think it's such an individual decision. You're making such a great point, though, about the messenger, because what I've noticed in the Black community is when we listen, as you said, non-judgmentally and let people ask questions, they start moving toward the vaccine. But I also agree with you. One of our biggest failures is not being prepared to deploy the vaccine to where people are. Because that will enable access. Why do our public health system has known about these sorts of
we've been talking about it with HIV or anything else before this.
Why are we still failing at this?
I think we are designed to, in a way, the public health system is, we need a major overhaul after this, because it was really interesting that it was only later thought that it would be necessary to not, mass vaccination sites were great if it was convenient. That's not what's needed now. Now it's going out in communities and making it super easy there, and even bringing it to the workplace, then saying you can go home, please, and we will be paying you for the next 3 days. And then you can come back on Monday after this mass vaccination campaign in our site. And it seems like only after the first 3 months of deployment that got put back into the equation, when President Biden's been talking about what he wants by July 4th and how to get there. And now I think, like, for example, we had something called the Max the Vax campaign in Bayview Hunters Point in San Francisco last week. And I was there, but I didn't say a word because I was just there if there were any questions. It really was like community members saying, of course tell me what your questions are. Like, of course you feel like that. People were writing down on pieces of paper, what made them distrustful? Why? Like, what would be confusing about this?
What were they writing?
Well, so that somehow essentially a public health problem of what it felt like to feel unsafe from the police, for example, in San Francisco, had not been addressed. And yet the public health problem of COVID was more like, hey, we want everyone to get this vaccine so we can give normal. So just roll up your sleeve. So how come public health problems relevant to a community had only been addressed now? Like, what was that? Like, what is that about years of not thinking about police violence and addressing things when it mattered to a community? So that becomes distrust in public health. And then, having people see more that who were affected by this virus, like in any other infectious disease, racial and ethnic minorities, essential workers, then you're kind of saying to people, now take time off work and just go and get vaccinated so you can protect us. You know, there was something that felt very uncompassionate about the messaging.
Yeah. I hear you talking about racial and ethnic minorities. You know, we're in a time when the language keeps shifting, and I'm humbled by, you know, the ways we've talked about things in the past. It's no longer tolerant. So now I understand racial and ethnic minorities are now the global majority. And if you think about it, you know, because we need to have more of a global perspective. Black and brown people probably are the majority if you're talking about the world. So
the planet, yeah.
Something I wanted to raise when I heard you.
Good point.
But I know you're super busy and have a lot going on. So I just have one more question for you before we say goodbye. I would love to hear what has surprised you during the pandemic. As you know, an experienced infectious disease doc and public health expert, you've seen a lot, you understand a lot. What has surprised you and what's making you hopeful?
I think what surprised me is getting the mixture of biological tools about an infection, either masks or vaccines, getting so politicized. And also what surprised me is that we didn't concentrate enough on children's health and mental health than I think other countries did. And that also became politicized about school openings and just clean data on what was happening, how we message that would lead parents and teachers understandably to feel fear. I think what makes me hopeful is that I don't actually think everyone has to get the vaccine, and I understand distrust. I definitely understand it. What makes me hopeful is that population level immunity, or enough people being immune to a virus, does fundamentally make the virus simmer to a dull roar. Like you and I have seen measles in our careers, but it's not on everyone's mind like COVID is right now for the public. And so I'm always delighted by the concept of herd immunity and that we can get there fundamentally. And then that leads me to the last thing that I would ever want to say, which is that I'm an Indian American physician, and where I'm going tonight is to my cousin's house, whose mother just died of COVID in India, and the global vaccine issue. When we look back at HIV, where we just somehow decided, or somehow as a world decided, that highly active antiretroviral therapies could be made available for the US and Europe for years and years and years before getting the only intervention that turned around the infection to a chronic normal life disease, which was antiretroviral therapy to sub-Saharan Africans. It took us years, took us 10 years after they were developed, 10. Still don't have full access to antiretroviral therapy worldwide. So we don't have years here. We have days to make decisions on global vaccine equity, and on waiving patents, and on donating doses, and on global manufacturing capacity, and on getting big companies who are making these vaccines and making a profit to philanthropically give doses, and for big tech companies who made a lot of money during this pandemic to give doses, to purchase and give doses to countries. So we need to get through this year, in this calendar 2021, and we could do it if we had more global vaccine equity.
Wow, such wonderful calls to action. I hope they're all listening to you. Pharma, tech, the business community. Outstanding. Well, Monica, thank you so much for being here. It's so great to see you after all this time.
It's so great to see you.
And I'm going to take you up on your offer. I'm going to call you about San Francisco. People
okay,
will be wondering, what are they talking about? But that's okay.
Okay, call me. We're going to talk, and we're going to hang out. Okay, thank you.
See you later.
Okay, bye.